Again, these inquiries failed, sabotaged by missing witnesses, vanished records, or sudden deaths. One sheriff who dared attempt a raid was later found drowned in a creek, his lungs filled not with water but with ash. Another investigator fell from his horse and was discovered with every bone broken, as though he had been crushed by some unseen weight. It was not until the late 1850s that the church finally faced serious exposure. Survive their stories of accusers. To this day, debate rages over how many truly perished in Ravenwood's shadows. Conservative estimates suggest dozens, but some whisper of hundreds, the souls claimed by a doctrine that promised purity but delivered only horror. The fire that consumed the Ravenwood jail was more than an accident of history, it was the birth of. Witnesses described the night in 1851 as a storm of confusion. Flames licked the sky, guards shouted as the cells cracked open, and amidst the chaos, the towering figure of Ezra was glimpsed slipping into the darkness, his eyes burning brighter than the fire itself. Some swore he was aided by unseen allies, whispering that the cult's influence stretched farther than anyone dared admit. Others insisted it was divine intervention of a darker kind, that the same spirits the Church of the Pure Spirit claimed to worship had freed their prophet for greater work. Silas, caught in the aftermath, was tried and hanged, but he went to his death with lips sealed, a faint smile suggesting that something unfinished remained. The ruins of the octagonal church stood silent after the raids, yet the land never knew peace. Locals avoided the forest, claiming to hear muffled cries from beneath the earth. Travelers swore the shadows moved unnaturally among the mossy stones. When investigators finally returned in 1862, spurred by new testimonies and political pressure, what they found chilled even the most hardened men of law. Beneath the shattered altar, stairways descended into catacombs more extensive than anyone had imagined. Passage after passage revealed bodies preserved in states both grotesque and sacred, some arranged as if in prayer, others mutilated and posed as icons of suffering. The tally of victims swelled beyond 400, a number so monstrous that newspapers struggled to print it without sounding like fiction. And yet the truth was darker still, for among the corpses were children, their tiny frames preserved beside Christian or pagan tradition. The documents unearthed in those years painted a story not of random madness, but of deliberate philosophy. Silas's journals, preserved in ash-stained trunks, spoke of a desire to chart the anatomy of the soul through torment. Diagrams sketched the body as a cage of energies, with pain as the key to unlocking what lay within. Caleb's rambling visions described a ladder of suffering by which mortals might ascend into purity, each rung requiring sacrifice. Ezra's writings, more commanding, declared the mission as global. Ravenwood was but the seed, planted so that others across the continent might take root. It was these pages, and not the bodies, that led some to whisper that the Church of the Pure Spirit did not die in fire and gallows, but rather scattered, like embers waiting to ignite. Indeed, in the decades that followed, stories emerged in towns far from New York. In a remote settlement of Ohio, an abandoned barn revealed strange identical to those etched on Ravenwood's. In Louisiana, rumors spread of children vanishing during revival meetings led by a preacher who claimed to speak of purity through trials. Even in the deserts of New Mexico, explorers found a ruined chapel whose octagonal design echoed the black stone church in Ravenwood, though its origins were shrouded in silence. Whether these were true offshoots of Ezra's movement or coincidences twisted by fear, none could say. But to those who believed, the thought that Ezra had survived and seeded new cults was too plausible to ignore. Meanwhile, scholars debated the meaning of the cult's obsession with suffering. Some dismissed it as sadistic fanaticism, a product of three disturbed brothers who preyed on the vulnerable. Others argued it was a twisted mirror of the revivalist fervor that swept the burned-over district, where hundreds of sects preached radical visions of salvation. But there were always those who looked deeper, noting that many of the church's rites echoed fragments of older traditions, Norse sacrifices to Odin, who hung upon the tree to gain wisdom, medieval flagellants who scourged themselves, even whispers of Mesoamerican rites where blood opened the path to the divine. Perhaps, they suggested, the Ravencroft brothers did not invent their creed, but inherited pieces of forgotten lore, stitching them into a new gospel of agony. The human cost, however, was never abstract. Families torn apart by the cult's promises left scars across generations. Survivors told of mothers who handed over their infants, convinced suffering would preserve their souls. Widowers wept over wives who joined the rituals and never returned. The descendants of Ravenwood carried a legacy of silence and shame, many fleeing the area altogether, their names changed to escape association. And yet the land itself bore memory. Farmers plowing fields unearthed bones, charred relics, or carved stones that should not have been there. The state erected no official monument, preferring to bury the scandal under layers of reform. But the whispers persisted. By the late 19th century, amateur historians and sensationalist writers resurrected the tale. Penny Dreadfuls painted Ezra as a demon in human form, leading secret midnight masses where blood replaced wine. Spiritualists claimed to contact the souls of the victims during seances, their voices shrill with warnings of unfinished work. Manipulation, or genuine spiritual experimentation gone horribly wrong.